Hello friends, my name is Bahroz. I'm a career coach and welcome to my channel where I talk about career success and professional growth. In this video, we're going to tackle one of the most common SHL tests, the SHL Verbal Reasoning Test. I'll walk you through sample questions and how to approach them effectively. We know that the key challenge isn't just getting the question right, it's getting them right in the shortest time possible. So I will be teaching you all that. I have a few sample questions and I will also explain how to find their answers. If you're applying for a role that involves interpreting written reports, making strategic decisions, or working with complex information, mastering this particular test is crucial. I previously made a video on the entire SHL test where I break down each section in detail, and I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already. Now, the best way to improve your test scores is practice, practice, practice. So what I did was I went on the web and found this wonderful website that has all the sample tests and practice questions which mimic the original SHL test. I highly recommend checking it out. I'll leave the link in the description so you can start practicing right away. Now, before we move forward, I have a special ask of you. One, press the like button as this keeps me motivated, and more importantly, press the subscribe button if not done already, because on this channel I post content pertaining to how you can achieve success in your career. So if this topic is of interest to you, this channel is right for you. So now let's quickly talk about what is SHL Verbal Reasoning Test. Well, it assesses your ability to understand and evaluate written information, draw logical conclusions, and determine whether statements are true, false, or impossible to say based on the passage. All questions follow the same pattern known as TFC: true, false, or cannot say. You'll be given a short passage and a related statement. Your task is to determine whether the statement is true, which means logically follows from the passage, false, which means it contradicts the passage, or cannot say, which means not enough information is provided to determine its truth. And here are the sample questions. Note, as I share the sample questions and their answers, I will also be spreading some special tips and tricks across the video. So make sure you watch all the way till the end. Question 1. Read the text and answer the question below. A United Nations report has warned of the potential problems of global warming. If the production of greenhouse gases continues at the current rate, it will result in the melting of ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica. The consequences of this will be rising sea levels, which endanger 145 million people. In response, the report emphasizes the need for an immediate international agreement on reducing emissions. Statement: reducing emissions will help to slow down the progress of global warming. Answer: true. The passage states that the United Nations report emphasizes the need for an immediate international agreement on reducing emissions. This implies that reducing emissions is viewed as a method to address or slow down global warming. Therefore, the statement is true based on the passage. Question 2. Read the text and answer the question below. Economic research has identified a trend among 1 in 6 Britons of hiding cash at home instead of investing it. This behavior is referred to as the biscuit tin economy. It is estimated that $3.5 billion is currently hidden in homes across the country. While people have various reasons for doing this, 6% are hiding the money from their partners and 4% believe it is safer at home than in a bank. Researchers believe these practices represent economic folly, costing Britons up to $174 million in lost interest each year. This biscuit tin economy betrays its followers by rendering their money unproductive and potentially unsafe, whereas it could be profitably invested in stocks or high-interest savings accounts. Statement: the majority of people who hide cash on their property do so because they either do not trust banks or they are hiding it from their partners. Answer: cannot say. The passage indicates that 6% hide cash from their partners and 4% do not trust banks, totaling 10%. However, the behavior is exhibited by 1 in 6 Britons, or approximately 16.7%. Since no reasons are provided for the remaining 6.7%, we cannot determine whether the majority falls into the specified categories. Therefore, the answer is cannot say. Question 3. Read the text and answer the question below. Several safe as houses alarms have been redesigned to reduce the number of complaints about false activations. One of the newer models is less sensitive than previous ones. Studies show that these new alarms are rarely triggered without cause. However, safe as houses still sells many of the original sensitive models because the increased threshold in the newer versions might cause them to fail to detect break-ins that involve limited force. Statement: some people prefer to buy alarms that sometimes activate for no reason. Answer: true. The continued sale of the original, more sensitive alarms, despite the availability of improved models, suggests that some customers prefer the original version even if it occasionally activates for no reason. Hence, the statement is true. Question 4. Read the text and answer the question below. Saga Stores enjoys an international reputation for quality and style. Nowhere is this more important than in the dress and appearance of its staff. The company sets minimum appearance standards for all shop floor employees, with some departments imposing additional requirements. Hair must always be clean, tidy, and well groomed. Designer Corner follows a stricter dress code requiring business attire. Women must wear tailored suits with white or cream blouses. Men must wear dark gray trousers, a white shirt, and a navy blazer. Statement: female staff in Designer Corner must wear tailored suits. Answer: true. The passage clearly states the dress requirements for female employees in Designer Corner, confirming the statement as true. Now here note a few important tips. Number 1, stick to only what's stated. What does it mean? Well, base your answer strictly on the information provided in the passage. Do not use outside knowledge or assumptions. Even if something seems obvious, if it's not explicitly stated or clearly implied, treat it as unknown. Number 2 is watch out for absolutes. Like, be cautious of statements with words like always, never, all, none, only, etc., etc. If the passage doesn't confirm such absolutes, lean towards cannot say. I have other few tips as well, which I'll spread across the video, so continue watching the sample questions and their answers. Next question: the early chaos of the home computer industry. In the United States, US, where it was developed, probably had a more detrimental effect in Europe than it did in the United States. All of the innovations in the field were companies which were too small to cope with or understand foreign sales. As a result, all US companies sold exclusively through European distributors, some of which were only interested in making maximum profits in a minimum amount of time. Home computing in Europe got off to a slow start because greedy distributors worked through incompetent suppliers, none of which had any real interest in the long-term future of the technology. The use of distributors in Europe eased the burden of foreign sales for small technology companies in the United States. Answer is false. The passage indicates that US companies sold exclusively through European distributors because they were too small to cope with or understand foreign sales. However, it does not suggest that this eased the burden. In fact, it describes the situation as problematic, stating that greedy distributors worked through incompetent suppliers, leading to a slow start for home computing in Europe. This implies that the use of distributors created more problems than it solved, so the statement is false. Next question. Staff training can have a number of objectives. It can be educational, aiming to develop the knowledge, skills, and abilities of the trainees. It can be a vehicle to promote company policies or values. Finally, it can raise levels of staff satisfaction by ensuring employees are able to improve their existing skills. Lively debate usually accompanies the allocation of expenditure to the annual training budget. Critics argue that certain costs associated with such programs could be scaled down, and those courses which are unproductive could be cut. Staff training gets support from some individuals responsible for allocating funds within organizations. Answer is C, cannot say. The passage mentions that there is lively debate about the training budget and that critics argue some costs should be scaled down or cut. However, it does not explicitly state whether any individuals support the training or its budget allocation. Since no information is provided about supporters, we cannot say for sure whether training gets support from some individuals responsible for allocating funds. Therefore, the answer is C, cannot say. Next question. Despite decreases in the miles traveled by the average cyclist in recent years, the increase in bicycle sales over the last 5 years has meant a corresponding increase in cycle accidents. This increase is especially marked among teenagers and young children. Last year, 45% of all bicycle casualties were under 14 years of age and another 20% under 20 years of age. The provisional figures for this year show some improvement, but the fact remains that the number of cyclists of all ages injured each year is unacceptably high. New bicycle owners travel fewer miles on average than cyclists that have owned their bicycle for more than 5 years. Answer is C, cannot say. The passage mentions that miles traveled by the average cyclist have decreased and that bicycle sales have increased, but it does not compare the mileage of new bicycle owners versus those who have owned their bicycle for more than 5 years. Since this specific comparison is not made, the correct answer is C, cannot say. Question number 8. Hargreaves, one of the country's leading specialist electrical engineering companies, announced the rejection of a takeover bid made by the larger, more generalized MLT Group. The board of directors stated that this was the decision of the majority of shareholders, and the announcement kept the price of Hargreaves shares where it had stood before the bid had been made. The chairman was known to be very relieved by the decision, as he could see no advantage for the shareholders, the company, or its employees in the takeover, despite evidence indicating that share prices are proportional to a company's size. If the takeover had occurred, share prices for Hargreaves would have gone down. Answer is C, cannot say. The passage mentions that share prices are generally proportional to a company's size, which might suggest that a takeover by a larger company could increase Hargreaves' share price. However, it also states that the chairman saw no advantage in the takeover and that the share price remained unchanged after the bid was rejected. There is no clear statement or evidence indicating that the share price would have gone down if the takeover had happened. Therefore, the correct answer is C, cannot say. Now, here are 2 more tips. Number 1 is match the scope of the question. Like, ensure the question and the answer option cover the same scope, time, group, context. For example, if the passage refers to some people and the statement refers to most people, that's a mismatch, likely false or cannot say. Second tip is pay attention to cause and effect, which means be careful when questions assume causation from the passage. If the passage mentions correlation or a situation but not direct cause, avoid picking true. Question number 9. Although people are buying less sugar to add to their food, the percentage of sugar eaten in manufactured foods is increasing sharply. In manufactured food, sugar is often referred to on the label as fructose, sucrose, or dextrose. Most studies show that the human body cannot tell the difference between fructose and sucrose. Because of the increase in childhood obesity, there is a concern at the growing compulsion to eat over-sugared food. No studies prove that consuming large amounts of sugar causes coronary heart disease, however. Also, sugar does not by itself make people fat. There is no correlation between the overconsumption of sugar and coronary heart disease. Answer is cannot say. The passage states no studies prove that consuming large amounts of sugar causes coronary heart disease. However, absence of proof is not proof of absence. Just because studies haven't proven a link doesn't mean no correlation exists. The text does not explicitly state whether or not a correlation exists, only that causation hasn't been proven. Therefore, the correct answer is cannot say. Next question. A newly developed process of creating artificial skin may be useful for treating burns and wounds. The established method of treating such injuries is using a skin graft taken from another, usually unseen, part of the body. However, artificial skin grown in the lab from cells called fibroblasts has shown in a handful of trials to have better healing properties than living skin and a lower tendency towards scarring. The process is currently being refined by researchers who maintain that the wide availability of artificial skin could completely transform the way burns and other skin damage are treated. The artificial skin grafting process is readily available. Answer is false. The passage states that the artificial skin process is currently being refined by researchers, which implies it is not yet widely available. It also mentions it has only been tested in a handful of trials. Therefore, the statement that it is readily available is false. Question number 11. Despite vehicle improvements and campaigns for road safety, many injuries and fatalities are still caused by collisions and other incidents involving vehicles. According to the investigations in the United States, some of these accidents could be prevented through the development of a mobile internet network. All of the cars on a stretch of road would be linked to each other, comprising the mobile network. Only one of these vehicles would need to be connected to the internet to download travel news to the mobile network. The studies highlight the safety advantages of such a system, which would enable drivers to find out about accidents and potential dangers as they happen, and in relation to their particular location, drivers and emergency service teams would have detailed information about problematic areas. There are, however, possible drawbacks to the development of such networks, including that the availability of data within them could facilitate privacy infringements. A mobile network would allow for drivers to ascertain the distance between their location and an accident ahead. Answer is cannot say. The passage states that the mobile network would allow drivers to find out about accidents and potential dangers as they happen and in relation to their particular location, but it does not specifically mention that the system provides information about the distance between the driver and the accident. Since this detail is not explicitly stated, the correct answer is cannot say. Question number 12. Wi-Fi technology, which allows users to wirelessly connect to the internet, has an obvious aesthetic benefit in that it can remove some of the unsightly wires which surround computers. However, Wi-Fi technology is also beneficial for businesses as it allows employees to work more flexibly, while it also negates the need for businesses to install expensive cabling, which is particularly useful if their office is in a rented building. As a result of the popularity of Wi-Fi, laws have had to be reviewed, and there have been convictions where people have been using someone else's Wi-Fi without paying for the service. These reviews of the law are crucial in ensuring that Wi-Fi is presented as a secure form of technology, as only then will it retain the support of businesses. Wireless internet access has the fastest transfer of information via the internet. Answer is cannot say. The passage discusses the aesthetic and practical business benefits of Wi-Fi and mentions issues of security and legal use, but it does not provide any information about the speed of information transfer or how it compares to other types of internet access, example wired connections like Ethernet or fiber optic. Since the speed of wireless internet is not mentioned, the correct answer is cannot say. Now here are last two tips, which is number 1, paraphrase the passage before answering. Reword the main idea of the statement in your own words based on the passage and check for alignment. This helps avoid being tricked by familiar sounding but misleading statements. And number 2, use cannot say when evidence is incomplete. If there is even a small gap in the information needed to fully confirm or reject a statement, choose number C, which is cannot say. It's the correct answer more often than people expect in these tests. Next question. A report from a prestigious university has urged the world's richest countries to consider the precarious position of bird species from around the world. The study suggests that acting now could ensure the survival of 400 to 900 species of land birds that are at risk because of the action of humans. The report pays particular attention to the dangers faced by those species which are highly specialized and may not be able to adapt to changes in their environment. Richer countries currently have little awareness of the dangers faced by bird species around the world and tend to concentrate on the preservation of local species instead. Rich countries show little awareness of the need to preserve bird species. Answer is true. The passage explicitly states, richer countries currently have little awareness of the dangers faced by bird species around the world. This directly supports the statement that rich countries show little awareness of the need to preserve bird species, making the correct answer true. Next question. Timed examinations have always played an influential role in assessing the abilities of students. However, with increasing worries that pupils are plagiarizing material from the internet for their final year assignments, there is going to be a renewed emphasis on traditional supervised assessment, albeit in a revised format. The new form of controlled assessment will still allow students to conduct independent research on the internet and participate in beneficial practical activities such as educational trips, but it will also require students to present their final conclusions under supervised conditions within their school. It is hoped that these controlled assessments will maintain the integrity of their school qualifications while also not disadvantaging those students who become stressed by traditional timed examinations. The students' use of the internet will be uninhibited by this new form of assessment. Answer is false. The passage states that under the new form of controlled assessment, students can still conduct independent research on the internet, but their final conclusions must be presented under supervised conditions. This means their use of the internet is somewhat limited. It is allowed during research, but the final assessment is controlled and supervised. Therefore, the statement use will be uninhibited is false. Last question. In the future, it may be possible to construct environments in space capable of supporting significant numbers of inhabitants in conditions that resemble those on Earth. New manufacturing technologies are being studied which will enable work to be done in space by means of a combination of heat and kinetic energy. It has been shown that steel casting and welding is possible heating the metal using a combination of sunlight and electrical energy. Solar power provides manufacturers with the readily available natural power resource, and this energy can be intensified for use in manufacturing with the utilization of an arrangement of maneuverable mirrors. Theoretically, space manufacturing could require only a very small amount of material being brought from Earth. A combination of solar power, electrical energy, and kinetic energy may be used in the manufacturing of structures in space. The answer is true. The passage mentions that steel casting and welding is possible using a combination of sunlight, solar power, and electrical energy. New manufacturing technologies are being studied which use a combination of heat and kinetic energy. This supports the idea that solar power, electrical energy, and kinetic energy may all play a role in space manufacturing. Therefore, the correct answer is true. Thank you guys for watching this video. Hopefully, after watching this video, you now have a better understanding of how the SHL Verbal Reasoning Test works and how to tackle the question. Good luck with the test.